Hi everyone, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsSTM.com. Welcome back for another Yippee for Yana episode. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a card using a limited color palette. All supplies I'm using for this project are listed and linked in the video description below. I challenged myself to use a limited color palette and color a scene. So even though this is a scene card and typically you would use all sorts of colors to color the scene, I wanted to have a limited number of options to see what I could create. So you'll see me use just pinks and oranges with a little hint of green today. Let's go ahead and get started, and I encourage you to join me in this little color challenge and see if you can stick to a limited color palette when creating a card. I'm starting to work on my card by stamping a beautiful image from the Little Things stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. I have a cute row of houses. I can never resist houses. I don't know what is it about them or any architectural element really, but I'm always drawn to these images and I always want to use them on my card. So here I have a mini MISTI stamping tool. I have Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and I'm stamping this image using Memento TUXEDO black ink because I will be coloring these using alcohol markers. By the way, I'm not using the typical Copic markers, so not the markers I use every time I do coloring, but I'm going to use all those today. I'm also going to stamp another image from this stamp set, but I'm only stamping a partial here. So there is a cute little bench with a tree next to it. I only need the tree because I want to have some greenery behind my houses. So I have stamped partial trees behind, well, not behind, they will be behind, but right now they're not behind. So I stamped a few partial images, a few trees onto this panel, and I'll color those as well. So here I have already started coloring my images and I'm using Olo markers. I love to use my Copic markers and I typically reach for Copics, but for this particular card, I wanted to try and see if I can find some new fresh colors, and Olos seem to work really well for this project. I will use just two shades for each of the houses, a lighter shade and a darker shade. So you'll see me use a lighter pink and a darker pink for the house. I'm basically doing a solid layer of color for each of my images. Right now I'm saturating my house using the dark pink. This is the RV02, and using the RV04 to add some shadows. I'm not going to use any other colors here. Typically, you would probably use some light blues or dark blues to color the glass in the windows. You could also use another color to color the doors and the awning, and maybe add some other colors to add detail to the house. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just sticking to that one color, beautiful pink. I will later come back to this image and color the trees green because that kind of makes sense. You know, the trees or the greenery, the shrubs, those are usually green unless that's fall, and you can kind of color them orange, I guess, or red, but I'm not making a fall card. I'm making an everyday cheerful and bright card, so I will color those using greens. Next, I'm coloring this house using the orange markers. You can see the numbers on the caps as I'm doing my coloring. And again, just using this one orange marker or the two shades of the orange marker to color the entire house. I first applied the lighter orange and then added the darker orange to create shading, and also using the darker orange color to color the awning here. The next house, I'm once again using pink, but this is a different shade of pink. This is a lighter pink, so I'm starting with the RV01, and I will use the RV02 to add the shading. Later, you will see me interchange the colors a little bit, so I will add some orange details to the pink houses and vice versa, just to have a little bit, just a tiny bit of color variation. As for the shading, I'm trying to add the shading on the right-hand side of my houses and also at the bottom, and also anywhere where I envision an element casting a shadow onto the house. If I have a little detail under the window, I will add shading there. If I have a little detail under the roof, I will add some shading there, and so on. These are small images, so you don't really have a lot of room to do the shading, but you know, it never hurts to add a tiny bit of shading to your houses. So here you can see me adding the orange color to the pink house, adding the shading as well, and it's starting to look really, really beautiful. I have just a few finishing touches left to add, and we will start cutting this image out. Like I said, I used green markers to color the little trees next to the entrance on that first house on the left, and also to the little bush on the last house. And I'm using the same colors to color the trees that I will add behind my row of houses. There is a coordinating die available, and I went ahead and used mine to cut these images out, and I just love the way they turned out. I have a panel of sea glass cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I trimmed this to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I'm going to build my scene on this panel, and this panel will then go onto an A2 card. I need to stamp a sentiment. For this particular card, I wanted to stamp one that says, "I love spending time with you." I have a dear friend that I want to give this card to, so I was making this card with her in mind. I'm using VersaFine ONYX black ink to stamp the sentiment, and I'm going to stamp it directly under the houses. I'm going to foam mount the houses somewhat in the center of my panel. I am using foam adhesive tape. This is the Alt-New tape to pop this panel up on my card. So I have an A2 card base. This measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And next, I'm going to use foam adhesive squares to foam mount my row of houses. Now, I like to have nice and sturdy die cuts, so I went ahead and I die cut another piece for the houses. It's a blank piece, and I used glue to adhere the two die cuts together. So this now gives me a nice and sturdy piece for my card. And I used foam adhesive squares from the back of this die cut to foam mount this in the center of my panel. I'm also adding the trees. There is foam adhesive from the back of the trees. So I'm adding them onto my card behind the houses just to create an illusion of some greenery behind my little neighborhood. I wanted to color this white section as it was sort of bothering me. It just didn't look quite right. I tried to find the marker that best matched the cardstock background color. I couldn't find one that was exactly the same color, but the B03 Olo marker sort of did the trick. You can kind of see on the finished card that it's not exactly the same color. It didn't color match, but it's blue, you know, and the sky is blue, so that worked for me. I felt like this card needed some sparkles, so I went ahead and I added some sequins from the duckling embellishment mix from Simon Says Stamp, and that finished my card. So here's a look at the finished project I have for you today, featuring a limited color palette. I didn't use any browns, I didn't use any grays, any blacks, any blues. Well, I did use a little bit of blue, but just a tiny bit. So I encourage you to give this idea a try, see if you can create a card using a limited color palette. Thanks so much for joining me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you again next time.
I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.